In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to draw water ripples in just a few simple steps. Imagine something dropped into a pool of water, creating a splash and ripples on the water's surface. That's what we're going to draw today. The last tutorial was about drawing water droplets with pencils, and that was quite easy to explain. But this one is a bit more complex. Water ripples are still just circles, and we can use that fact to make things easier for us. Let's draw the initial pattern, which is going to be our outline for the drawing. You can draw your circle in a more accurate perspective using a square as a guideline. So as usual, find the middle and draw the circle inside the square. Choose an angle and perspective and draw rings of water. By how much depends on the view angle. The flatter the view angle, the higher the difference. There are other ways to make the drawing's perspective more accurate, but this is a very simple and a straightforward way. Choose the point where the center is supposed to be and draw the rings of water around it. The size of the ellipses that you draw does not matter at all, since all the lines that you're going to draw will follow the exact same curvature. That is what concentric means. All the circles have the exact same center point, just different scales. Leave a bit of room in the middle and draw the first couple of circles that are going to be the ripples. As the next step, we draw the water pillar rising from the middle of the splash. That kind of pillar is just one form of many that a water splash can have, but it is one of the simpler ones. So start from the center. Draw a pillar straight up. It is wider at the bottom, and at its peak it has a sphere stuck to it. And then there can be a small drop in the middle of the air above the pillar. It looks a bit odd at this stage, but we're not done. Next up, use a light pencil. I pick an HB pencil as usual and put down the first layer of graphite just to determine the placement of darks and light areas. We will make this drawing only with shading and highlighting. Light and shadows play a very important role here, and the shapes are definitely much more complex than just a simple circle. Start shading from the center with very light pressure. By the way, you don't have to worry about drawing perfectly at this stage at all. Later on, we will adjust everything by smudging and blending and increasing the contrast. So just focus on finding the placement of those dark and light areas now. Do that a couple of times with the circles being about the same distance apart from each other. Here I did almost 6 parts, but you can choose a different number. And as the distance increases, those lines get wider and narrower. This is visually so much more pleasing than only drawing complete circles all the way. Next up, choose a darker graphite pencil, like for example a 2B or 3B pencil, and draw lines where the ripples are the darkest. So increase the contrast of your drawing by adding more layers of graphite on the dark spots. In this example, the light simply comes from straight behind and a little bit on top, so the shadows are facing the viewer. Different light angles can change the look of the picture quite dramatically, so be mindful of that. Decrease the pressure as you go to the left or right side of each one of these half circles. Fade them into the color of the paper. That way the line gets smoother at the sides to follow the perspective of the drawing. The top or bottom of these rings and ripples are sharper, so we need more rigid borders here. Do a bit of shading and adding contrast at the base of the pillar, and leave the middle parts of the pillar unshaded. Also, as a general advice, look up references. That's going to be a huge help. Even the most detailed instructions from me cannot fully replace the power of reference pictures and videos. Look at many different versions, observe them, analyze them, and then make the decision of what you want to draw. There's absolutely no shame in using references. Everybody does that. Make those dark lines thicker towards the center, similarly to how I show it in here. And again, don't worry about being perfect. Already resembling ripples, I would say. Next up, let's finally smudge those shadings. Use a blending tool and just blend and smudge away. Let's complete the pillar shading and give it more texture. Simply draw some random short curved lines across the pillar. This adds so much to the watery look to it. You don't need to make full circles. The bottom and top parts of the ripples are enough. Leave some solid white lines on the brightest areas along the middle. Narrow lines are sufficient. The light reflections are more focused on the bottom of the spherical shapes. Remember, the brighter spots are actually at the opposite side from where the light hits the water drops. I explained this in the previous tutorial. At first, shade softly and then make the more intense highlights. Alright, you might think now that we're done, but there is a little detail we still need to add. The reflection of the watercolor itself on the surface. Draw in some rough lines along the brighter parts of the ripples. Leave out the darker areas. Their curvature wouldn't show us the reflection. Slightly displace the individual segments from each other. All in all, it is not that complicated and can give you really satisfying results. It is not 100% physically correct and realistic, but it looks convincing enough, especially to the untrained eye. And that is what matters. As I said before, water splashes come in all sorts of shapes, definitely more complex than the pillar shape. And describing how to draw and shade this here would be a bit too much for this tutorial, so I will explain it in the next tutorial. Don't just shade the same straight pillar as before. Make the middle parts more transparent. Also make sure they blend in with the ripples shady parts. Don't forget to leave some parts for highlights similar to how they look on the original pillar. Obviously, that reflected image also has to obey to the curvature of the water surface, and it warps along the ripples. I hope that I was able to wake some fascination with water drops and splashes within you with this tutorial. I personally find them really cool and beautiful. They could be wonderful additions to your artworks even if they aren't the main focus. Water splashes are beautiful to look at and in my opinion quite enjoyable to draw. Alright, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this tutorial was easy to follow and helpful to you. Let me know which other tutorials you'd like to see on Peonypaint, and I'll do my best to bring them to you. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I'm glad you made it this far. Until next time, and have fun drawing!